called Blakely, Georgia. Listen, and I have an amazing testimony that God definitely blessed me with. I like to say that I did not just read about a testimony. I did not just see a testimony. No, I'm an actual whole miracle out here in these streets. Listen, I have suffered with a condition. I suffered with a condition for the majority of my life. It's a medical condition known as POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And what that condition did was it basically tried to take life from me. But one thing that I learned is that when the enemy tries to take something from you, if it has been ordained to you by God, then there's no way that he can do it. Because I am reminded that God called me to live and to live in abundance. But that particular condition caused me to be in a wheelchair. And I found myself in this wheelchair for over a year. I had been in that wheelchair for over a year, had lost a lot on the journey. Of course, while I was in the chair, it seemed as though I was taking hit after hit. I had been a teacher for 11 years. I lost my career. I was unable to continue teaching. And just so many different things. I had been out of work for a whole year. So that means that I lost income. One thing that I lost on the journey was what they call those so-called friends, those people that you thought would be there for you. But one day, and this is just the short version. This is the short version. It wasn't that I was just in a wheelchair. There were days that I could not even get up out of the bed. My mama and my husband had to help me with bathing and making sure that I was fed and putting my clothes on and driving me around. They had to feed me from time to time. They had to wash my hair. Everything that you could think of, the things that we so easily take for granted. I had to have assistance with. But one particular day, even in the midst of me going through all of that, I'm reminded of what Evangelist Murphy just said. The thing is, when you're going through, you have to know that you're not going to get stuck if you just keep on walking. And see, I was in a wheelchair, so my walking was not actual physical walking. I was not able to use my feet to walk through this journey. But what I had to do was I had to learn how to use my faith and allow my faith to walk me through the journey. I had to learn how to use my praise and allow my praise to walk me through the journey. I had to learn how to use my worship and allow my worship to walk me through the journey. But one particular day, one Sunday evening, we were invited, my husband and I were invited to come and do praise and worship at a church service. And the thing about this church service is that it wasn't just a church service. It was an actual worship experience. And we ended up at a church that we had never been to. My husband and I, we had never been to this church. And I like to say that it was a little church sitting down in the woods. And the pastor, the lady that was preaching that day, I had never met her. Never met her. And we were at the end of her sermon. She was finishing up her sermon, and she says that the Lord spoke to her and told her to command me to get out of the wheelchair. Now, what you have to understand is that I had been confined to a wheelchair for over a year. Had been confined to a wheelchair for over a year. They rolled me in that church in a wheelchair. We worshiped God. We had a visitation from him. And they rolled me in the chair, but bless God, I walked out of that church on my own 2 feet. And God is so faithful, and God is so gracious, and God is so good. My testimony is that I have been walking ever since. I have been out of that wheelchair it's been 2 years, going on 3 years now, that God miraculously delivered me from out of that wheelchair. And what I am reminded of is the same way that God miraculously delivered me from out of that physical wheelchair. There's no wheelchair in life that God is not able and willing to miraculously deliver you from. There's nothing that you can ever be faced with. There's nothing that you can ever be fronted with that God does not have the ability, the capability, and the desire to help you to be delivered from. So my testimony is simply this: I am what you call a miracle out here in these streets. God has been so faithful. God has been so gracious. gracious. God has been so kind. And as I'm ending this testimony, because I get excited when I talk about it, as I'm ending this testimony, I simply want for you to be encouraged in knowing that even though you may walk in the midst of trouble, I want you to know that you are not walking by yourself, because you have the one, you have the comforter, you have the King of Kings, you have the Lord of Lords, you have the God of God. Listen, you got a good Father that's walking right there with you. And he said that he would revive you. He said that he would save you. He said that he would keep back the wrath of your enemies with